In a world of secrets and hidden agendas, one organization holds the key to unraveling the truth. Join us on a thrilling adventure into the heart of election interference as we present Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity. They said it was just a conspiracy. They thought they could hide in plain sight. But they underestimated the power of curiosity, the power of those who dare to dig deeper. It all began with a whispered secret at Bard's Fest, a cryptic message that ignited a fire in some brave individuals. With a shovel in hand, we embarked on a quest that would forever change the course of American elections. As we peeled back the layers of deception, we uncovered the first pillar of election integrity, a hidden world of electronic voting machines where a dark magic called fraction magic could sway the very foundations of power. Yet as the shadows deepened, a new player emerged from obscurity. Arabella Advisors. Who were they? How do they fit into the puzzle? Arabella Advisors, a dark money group, lurked in the shadows, influencing elections and funding a network of power-hungry individuals and organizations. Follow us as we expose the hidden truths and expose the third pillar of election integrity. Together, we will dive deep into the labyrinth-themed world of the Clinton Foundation, where connections to Arabella Advisors begin to surface. Eric Kessler, a figure from the shadows, takes center stage. From his position of influence during the Clinton administration to his founding of Arabella Advisors, his role becomes increasingly clear. In this fight for transparency, the stakes couldn't be higher. Dark money, political maneuvering, and hidden agendas threaten to tear the very fabric of our elections. Will the truth prevail? Will the third pillar crumble under the weight of scrutiny? Join us on this heart-pounding journey as we unveil the secrets that could change the course of American history. Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity. Prepare to uncover the truth. Go to mgshow.link /Arabella to follow along and for more information.
The 1630 Fund, which is managed by Arabella Advisors, which is the largest Democrat dark money network in the country and considered public enemy number one.
As you know, Q has said, all assets F plus D being deployed, foreign plus domestic, and they all have foundations and institutes for a reason. Stupid. All of us Anons have been digging on the individual foundations and institutes. However, we miss the target because there's something much bigger, and it is hiding in plain sight. When I went to St. Louis for Bard's Fest, someone took me aside and said, "You need to dig into Arabella Advisors." I had never heard of them before. Then I got my shovel out, and what I found was frightening and required to be understood if we were going to fix our elections in America. As Q said, important to understand for future events. I believe this is the third pillar of election integrity. The Clinton Foundation is at the center of it with a dark money group called Arabella Advisors. What do I mean when I say that this is the third pillar of election integrity? I will go over what I call the first and second pillars of election integrity to understand this. The first pillar of election integrity. We have all heard about the electronic voting machines with Dominion, ES&S, GEM, HART, and SCTYL. But what you may not have heard of is called fraction magic. I have been following Bev Harris and her work since 2015. Bev and her team uncovered what they call fraction magic. In 2016, over 5,000 subcontractors and intermediaries had access to perform this for any or all clients. It can give contract signing authority to whomever the user chooses. All political power can be converted to the hands of a few anonymous subcontractors. It's a product, it's scalable, it learns its environment and can adjust to any political environment, any demographic. It runs silently, invisibly, and can produce plausible results that pass for the real thing. So, what about the voting machines and who owns the voting machines? There is a great video by Bev Harris for context on fraction magic at mg.show, and the video will be linked in the description. The second pillar of election integrity. In the 2020 election, we had a big push for mail-in ballots, which enabled massive ballot harvesting. How do you extend lockdowns, economic hardships, unemployment, fear, death count, dementia Joe, etc., in order to paint narrative, mail-in voting? When did narrative start? March, early, planned, needed to save lives, plus ballot harvesting, in order to generate a future narrative election day, +1, which casts doubt as to the legitimacy of POTUS win, constitutional crisis. Not all mail-in ballots counted. How many mail-in ballots lost or did not arrive in key battleground states which could have returned a different result? We must investigate who cast a vote, but it did not register. We must go door to door if needed, ballot harvest. Our lives are at stake. The sky is falling. In order to challenge legally, delay results, enact riots and chaos in an attempt to overturn coup d'etat. The deep state would not lose again, so they utilized mail-in voting and censorship and pressed the pedal to the metal. Is this about the virus or hiding what they have done to the American people? I can keep going on and on regarding the first two pillars of election integrity, but I want to show you the third pillar of election integrity. The third pillar of election integrity. Now enter Arabella Advisors. To achieve the third pillar of election integrity, we must purge foreign dark money out of our elections. If we are to understand what the third pillar of election integrity is, we must pose some critical questions. First, who are the individuals, foundations, and funds involved in impropriety regarding U.S. elections? Second, how is it all bankrolled and by whom? To answer these questions, we must identify the players involved. This brings us to another question. Who might have had the most to lose in past elections? To answer some of these questions, we must go back in time. The Clinton Foundation is a great place to start. In 1997, the foundation was born. It began as a small organization and evolved into today's Clinton machine. The NY Times posted a list of their donors. The who's who of the power-hungry elite can be found on the donor list, including Canadian John A. Poulos, co-founder of Dominion Voting Systems. Given what we already know about the Clintons and their donors, the Clintons appear to be at the center. Throughout our research, Eric Kessler's name kept coming up. So, who is Eric Kessler, and where does he fit into the story? During the Clinton administration, Eric was appointed by Bill Clinton as a White House appointee. He helped manage conservation issues during the Clinton administration. His tenure is not well known. We surmise Eric served from 1993 to 2001. In 2004, Democrats suffered severe losses even with the Clinton machine full steam ahead. After their vast defeat, George Soros and possibly Hans-Jörg Wyss convened a meeting of the top liberal strategists and progressive donors to conduct an autopsy of what went wrong. From that meeting, they formed a network of donors who committed to funding leaders and institutions that would last well into the future of election cycles. They invested in policy shops, watchdog groups, and training centers, an activist playground. As a result of this meeting, the idea of a new foreign dark money consultancy group was born, Arabella Advisors. In 2005, Eric Kessler founded a little for-profit consultancy group called Arabella Advisors, which has turned into a $1.7 billion dark money behemoth for the Democratic Party. In 2006, Eric founded a 501c3 called the New Venture Fund, and in 2009, they launched a 501c4 called the 1630 Fund. Stay tuned for part 2 of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity.
The 1630 Fund, which is managed by Arabella Advisors, which is the largest Democrat dark money network in the country and considered public enemy number one.
Welcome to the next installment of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity. Part 2. What is needed to launch the perfect foreign dark money network? Bring in a foreign billionaire megadonor with a seedy past, Hans-Jörg Wyss, He comes with his own Weiss Foundation and Weiss Action Fund. It would help if you had a way to move the money around. This is accomplished with the 501c3 and 501c4. Now you have the beginnings of a dark foreign network with the for-profit consulting firm Arabella Advisors managing it all. For context, let's take a closer look at foreign billionaire Hans-Jörg Wyss and his past dealings. He was the CEO and chairman of a billion-dollar medical company called Synths. It was alleged that the company was accused of ignoring FDA regulations. This caused at least 3 patients to lose their lives. Public records showed that in 2009, 4 Synths execs were indicted and went to prison. Hans-Jörg Wyss, however, remained untouchable. Hans-Jörg Wyss resigned as CEO but stayed on as chairman of Synths. In 2012, Synths was acquired by Johnson & Johnson for just under $20 billion. Hans-Jörg Wyss was also a mega donor for the Clinton Foundation. He injected millions into the Clinton machine. Since then, Hans-Jörg Wyss has quietly become an important foreign asset to the left's foreign dark money network, perhaps more significant than George Soros.
On the internet, people can be anything they want to be. That's why we tell kids to be careful and not to trust strangers they meet online. But people aren't the only ones who can claim to be something they're not on the web. Some organizations act like popular American movements, but in fact are anything but that. A slew of grassroots movements on the left are actually just megaphones for one Swiss billionaire,
Hans-Jörg Wyss.
Mr. Wyss. Hans-Jörg Wyss.
Who is this mysterious figure, and how did an uber-rich Swiss national end up funding fake advocacy on the American left? Wyss is the former CEO of the Synths Group, a Swiss medical device company with a less than stellar record of scientific integrity. But despite his company injecting human subjects with a bone cement with lethal results, Wyss amassed billions of dollars from his business ventures, and today he's using that money to fund murky far-left groups from the shadows. One of Wyss's top collaborators is Arabella Advisors, a consulting agency that specializes in creating fake grassroots websites to support far-left causes. Wyss has given the group $57 million since 2009. Arabella has created over 350 pop-up organizations parading as grassroots nonprofits, when in reality they're all run out of the same office by the same staff, much of it with Wyss's financial backing. Wyss also has his own Arabella-run group, the Hub Project, which is set up in the same way. But he didn't stop his mission to intervene in American politics there. Earlier this year, Wyss put in a major bid to buy Tribune Publishing, the group that controls the Chicago Tribune, the Baltimore Sun, the Daily News, and other top newspapers. Had this bid gone through, Wyss would have gained undeniable, far-reaching control over American media. But after his mega-donor status was exposed by CRC and the New York Times, Wyss pulled his bid. Even with the Swiss billionaire no longer a contender for this massive media ownership, it's troubling to think about someone with such staunch, biased political leanings controlling American newspapers from the shadows. So the next time you look at a grassroots campaign or a non-profit political advertisement, do your research. Ask yourself, are real Americans really supporting this? Is this as grassroots as it looks? Because, as the case of Hans-Jörg Wyss shows us, advocacy is not always what it seems. To follow the money and the bias of thousands of organizations, go to InfluenceWatch.com, a project of the Capital Research Center.
How it works. On March 22, 1983, the Supreme Court ruled a 501c3 organization may establish a separate 501c4 to expand its capacity to lobby beyond the limited expenditures allowed for a 501c3. 501c3 organizations, often referred to as public charities, may use tax-deductible donations to study essential policy issues and educate the public. Still, the amount of lobbying they may do is limited, and they are forbidden from supporting or opposing candidates for elected office. 501c4 organizations, often referred to as social welfare organizations, may participate in an unlimited amount of legislative lobbying and a limited amount of electoral activity. Still, they may not offer the incentive of a tax deduction to their contributors. A 501c3 organization may join multiple 501c3 and 501c4 organizations for any purpose consistent with its exempt status, such as conducting research or preparing and publicizing materials on a current issue. A 501c3 may also join other 501c3 and 501c4 to lobby on issues. However, a 501c3 may not do anything indirectly through the group that it cannot do individually. It can participate in multiple 501c3 and 501c4 to exchange non-electoral information or sponsor educational programs on issues of interest to the groups. A 501c3 may also conduct voter registration, voter education, and get out the vote activities, so long as these activities appear to be nonpartisan. Next, we examine how dark money is moved around. We will start with the funds Arabella Advisors manages. The 1630 Fund 501c4 is a left-of-center lobbying and advocacy organization founded in 2008. 1630 Fund often operates alongside its charitable sister nonprofit New Venture Fund, which provides similar funding and fiscal sponsorship services to left-of-center organizations. Both groups, along with the Hopewell Fund and Windward Fund. The New Venture Fund 501c3 is a dark money organization, serving as a way for left-leaning groups to anonymously funnel money toward various political advocacy issues, such as attacking vulnerable Republicans or pushing environmental restrictions. New Venture Fund was previously called the Arabella Legacy Fund from 2006 to 2009. The Hopewell Fund is a 501c3 established in 2015. The Hopewell Fund often operates alongside its sister nonprofits, primarily the 501c4 1630 Fund and 501c3 New Venture Fund, which both provide similar funding and fiscal sponsorship services to left-of-center advocacy organizations. The Windward Fund 501c3 was created in February 2015 as a 501c3 nonprofit with startup funding of $5.25 million provided by an unknown source. The fund is an environmentalist fiscal sponsor organization in the network of dark money organizations. The North Fund 501c4 was created in February 2019 as a 501c4 nonprofit with startup funding of $9.3 million provided by the 1630 Fund. The fund is a lawfare fund set up with Perkins Coie and Mark Elias Law Group for statewide ballot and gerrymandering initiatives. The 51 for 51 campaign to make D.C. a state and operates Mark Elias's Democracy Docket Action Fund is part of the Lawfare Initiative. Mark Elias, Perkins Coie, Shell 2, the Democratic National Committee's private law firm, formed Elias Law Group, 8/22/21. The purpose of Mark Elias Law Group is lawfare. Mark Elias North Fund is Arabella Advisors' in-house counsel, redistricting maps and fighting against election integrity to give Democrats an edge in upcoming elections. All funded by F, foreign, and D, domestic billionaires. Arabella Advisors, a for-profit consulting behemoth, has long been at the heart of managing nonprofits that funnel untraceable funds into the political sphere, primarily benefiting left-leaning groups. The incorporation of the Telescope Fund into its arsenal represents a strategic move to further veil the origins of political donations. This development, as reported by the Washington Free Beacon and confirmed by Arabella Advisors' spokesperson, places the firm at the epicenter of a burgeoning dark money network. The Telescope Fund, originally a subsidiary of the New Venture Fund under Arabella's umbrella, gained independent 501c3 status from the IRS in 2023, solidifying its role in the complex domain of political funding. Despite its success, the Telescope Fund and its parent network face scrutiny over the ethical implications of their operations. The District of Columbia Attorney General is currently investigating the New Venture Fund for potential violations of charity laws, specifically concerning its support for Democratic candidates. The fund's reliance on anonymous donations raises questions about the transparency and accountability of political funding. Critics argue that such mechanisms obscure the true influence of wealthy donors on American democracy, potentially skewing public policy in favor of undisclosed interests. This has been the second of a multi-part series on Arabella Advisors. Stay tuned for part 3 of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity.
The 1630 Fund, which is managed by Arabella Advisors, which is the largest Democrat dark money network in the country and considered public enemy #1.
Welcome to the next installment of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity, part 3. As we shine a brighter light into this secret world of foundations, we see deeper connections in darker corners. What if I told you Arabella Advisors, their funds and pop-up funds are heavily involved in the SCOTUS nomination? You'd be severely mistaken if you didn't think Arabella Advisors and their F foreign and D domestic assets weren't conspiring to install a Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America. Let us walk you through it. First, Arabella Advisors' 1630 funds pop-up demand justice somehow released Biden's SCOTUS choice nearly 24 hours before the rest of the country knew. Despite the news not breaking until Friday, February 25, 2022, Arabella Advisors Network uploaded their ad praising Judge Jackson Thursday, February 24, 2022. So, was the Biden team tipped off by their dark money allies before they even communicated to members of the Senate? This is probably an answer to a question America needs to know, as this is a violation of the third pillar of election integrity. Notwithstanding Senator Whitehouse's declaration that dark money played no role in the process, all the major F foreign and D domestic dark money networks led by Arabella Advisors were undoubtedly involved.
Mr. President, we are now embarking on the confirmation process of someone who has not auditioned to donor elites for a seat on the United States Supreme Court. No dark money machine guided her selection. That's refreshing.
The Arabella Advisors-backed dark money group leads Team Ketanji and We Demand Justice. This group has received immense backlash due to their board member, Ely Meistel, calling the U.S. Constitution trash. Since then, the legal correspondent doubles down on the claim U.S. Constitution is actually trash. The veneration that this country has for the Constitution is simply weird. It's crazy.
Some will say, okay, so are you arguing for throwing out the Constitution? Should the Constitution be thrown out? What do we do? Is it a living document? Or is it a sacred document?
It's certainly not sacred. All right, let's start there. The Constitution is kind of trash. Now, let's just talk as adults for a second.
What did you say? It's what?
It's kind of trash.
Trash.
We Demand Justice is one of the leading forces driving Joe Biden's Supreme Court pick. In addition, they set the actual fraud in motion by bullying Justice Stephen Breyer into retiring. We Demand Justice also has operatives that have infiltrated the Joe Biden White House. Allow us to introduce Paige Herwig, former Deputy Chief Counsel at We Demand Justice, currently serving as Biden's point person on the judicial nominees. Essentially, what this means is F foreign and D domestic dark money networks, led by Arabella Advisors, bullied Breyer into retiring. Then, they released a list of approved nominees, placing Ketanji Brown Jackson in the lead. Then Joe Biden, at the advice of Paige Herwig, selected her former employer's top pick. Remember, the Clinton Foundation is at the center of it all. We Demand Justice has been a partner on Hillary Rodham Clinton's website, onwardtogether.org. On February 26, 2022, Jim Jordan came out on Fox and Friends and was asked about the Supreme Court nominee and said that Ketanji Brown Jackson was being pushed by this dark money group called Arabella Advisory, and brought up Mark Elias, who is Arabella Advisors' lawyer, and mentioned in Trump's lawsuit and the Durham investigation.
I've nominated Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. Your reaction?
Well, I think it's another left-wing pick. You know, it's interesting that Arabella Advisory Group, this left-wing group, was the one behind pushing her. It's also interesting that group, their key lawyer, who they pay all kinds of money to, is Mark Elias, the same Mark Elias who was in the Durham filing, who was helping in this whole process of framing President Trump.
So
yeah. So she's pretty radical, and I do think the fundamental issue is where you are on parental rights. I mean, if you're right on school choice, if you're right on moms and dads having that should have the say-so, not government, when it comes to their well-being of their children, if you're right on that issue, I think you're right on most other things. And I think she's wrong on parental rights, which, you know, she's wrong on Second Amendment, First Amendment, and a whole bunch of other issues as well. So pretty radical choice. Let's see what happens in the Senate. Real quick.
Believe it or not, Lindsey Graham exposed Arabella's dark money network. We know, Rhino Lindsey. However, a broken clock is right twice a day. For some final context, our Supreme Court has been bought and paid for by the F, foreign, and D, domestic dark money networks for years. That is a hard pill to swallow.
Judge Jackson, you don't have any judicial philosophy per se. Well, somebody on the left believes you do. Or they wouldn't have spent the money they spent to have you in this chair. So we're going to find out how that statement holds up over time. A viewer's guide to this hearing. She will be asked about her sentencing practices as a district court judge, and she'll have a chance to explain her reasoning, and you can make up for yourself what this means, but it's good to be asked. About her legal views. I will ask her about the law of armed conflict and her view of the law of armed conflict. The fact that you represent a Gitmo detainees is not a problem with me. Everybody deserves a lawyer. You're doing their country a great service when you defend the most unpopular people. But I do want to know about your amicus briefs after you're no longer a defense counsel weighing into the Supreme Court about how they decide law of war issues. That matters a lot to me. I think it does matter that the groups that came to your aid at the expense of Judge Childs, how did that happen and why were they doing what they were doing? What is it about your nomination that the most liberal people under the umbrella of Arabella threw in their money, their time, their support, and threatened Joe Biden if he picked Judge Childs? I want to know more about that. I want to know about your judicial philosophy, because people on the left, the far extreme part of the left, believe that you were the best bet. And I want to know why they reached that conclusion. Maybe there's no explanation you can give us, but we'll talk about that. Now, when we say this is not Kavanaugh, what do we mean? It means that Democratic senators are not going to have their windows busted by groups. That's what it means. It means that no Republican senator is going to unleash on you an attack about your character when the hearing is virtually over. None of us, I hope, have been sitting on information about you as a person for weeks or months. You come into our offices and we never share it with you to allow you to give your side of the story. We wait to the very last minute when the hearing's about to be gavel concluded and say, oh, by the way, I've got this letter. And so happened that every media outlet in the country had the letter too. So the next morning there were headlines all over the country, really, accusing Judge Kavanaugh of being basically Bill Cosby. None of us are going to do that to you. And if any of us does that to you, all hell will break out, and it should. The media will be your biggest cheerleader. They're in your camp. They have every right to pick who they want to pick. There won't be this constant attack on you like Judge Kavanaugh and other conservative judicial appointments. There won't be any questioning of where you go to church, what kind of groups you're in church, how you decide to raise your kids, what you believe in, how you believe in God. Nobody's going to do that to you. And that's a good thing. So you're the beneficiary of a lot. You're the beneficiary of Republican nominees having their life turned upside down. And it didn't work. So I'm hoping that we can have a hearing that's respectful, that's informative, that's challenging. And President Biden has every right to pick who he'd like to pick. That comes with winning the White House. And I've been very inclined to support the picks of people that I would not have chosen. But this is a new game for the Supreme Court. And this game is particularly disturbing to me because there's been a wholesale effort of the left to take down a nominee from my state. and I don't like it very much. And if that's the way the game's going to be played, then I'll have a response, and I don't expect it to be reward that way of playing the game. Judge Childs would have gotten 60-plus votes. There had been people in my caucus that would have voted for her, even though we knew she would be a reliable liberal vote, because I and Senator Scott would have stepped up. Now we're facing a choice sponsored by the most radical elements of the Democratic Party when it comes to how to be a judge. They have the most radical view of what a judge should do, and you were their choice. And you'll be asked, do you support expanding the Supreme Court? I hope you can give us an answer, because it shouldn't be hard. Either you do or you don't. Justice Ginsburg said no. She thought if you just changed the number of the court every time somebody new came in power, it would ruin the court in the eyes of the public and make it a joke over time. I agree with that. So I hope you can give us an answer to that question, because I think the court would be better off if the judges stood up for the court. If the judges told politicians, don't play this game with the court, because over time nobody wins. So congratulations. It's going to be a couple interesting days, and we're off to a better start than we have been in the past. And the one thing I can promise you, you will not be vilified, you will not be attacked for your religious views, you will not be accused of something that you could not defend yourself against until it was too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Senator Feinstein.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by congratulating you, Judge Jackson, on this appointment. I've reviewed the records of a number of judicial nominees during my service on this committee. This is actually the 10th set of confirmation hearings for a Supreme Court nominee that I've participated in during my time in the Senate. And looking at your record, it's clear that you have the qualifications and the experience and the knowledge needed to serve on the Supreme Court. And as a woman, it makes me very proud of that.
Thank you for watching and sharing this latest installment. In our next installment, we will be digging deeper into the F foreign and D domestic assets that were deployed against we the people. This has been the third of a multi-part series on Arabella Advisors. Stay tuned for part 4 of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity.
The 1630 Fund, which is managed by Arabella Advisors, which is the largest Democrat dark money network in the country and considered public enemy number 1.
Welcome to the next installment of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity, part 4. Q told us, keep digging anon. So we kept digging. A KGF, foreign and D domestic dark money network, led by Arabella Advisors, is the main force changing the outcome of elections and more. All assets, F plus D, being deployed, foreign plus domestic, and they all have foundations and institutes for a reason, stupid. Before we can move forward, we must take a short detour to discuss how a 501c3 and 501c4 work in conjunction with one another through their respective organizations. On March 22, 1983, the Supreme Court ruled that a 501c3 organization may establish a separate 501c4 to expand its capacity to lobby beyond the limited expenditures allowed for a 501c3. 501c3 organizations, often referred to as public charities, may use tax-deductible donations to study essential policy issues and educate the public. Still, the amount of lobbying they may do is limited, and they are forbidden from supporting or opposing candidates for elective office. 501c4 organizations, often referred to as social welfare organizations, may participate in an unlimited amount of legislative lobbying and a limited amount of electoral activity. Still, they may not offer the incentive of a tax deduction to their contributors. As we stated previously, A 501c3 organization may join multiple 501c3 and 501c4 organizations for any purpose consistent with its exempt status, such as conducting research or preparing and publicizing materials on a current issue. A 501c3 may also join other 501c3 and 501c4s to lobby on issues. However, a 501c3 may not do anything indirectly through the group that it cannot do individually. It can participate in multiple 501c3s and 501c4s to exchange non-electoral information or sponsor educational programs on issues of interest to the groups. A 501c3 may also conduct voter registration, voter education, and get-out-the-vote activities, so long as these activities appear to be nonpartisan. Q Post 2807 asked us, who controls the distribution of funds? Who accounts for the funds? Who has access to the funds? Who really has access to the funds? Do funds return in the form of political donations? Do funds return in the form of massive donations to foundations and/or institutes? Do funds return in the form of offshore bank accounts for future payments, payoffs, replicate, environment, green, aid assist, etc.? No honest control in place, no checks and balances in place, no safeguards in place. Threat of an outsider becoming president, loss of control, trillions of dollars at stake, controlled by group of special interests, illusion of democracy. Welcome to the real world. We cannot afford to lose this rare opportunity to right the wrongs. We, the people, must reclaim what is rightfully ours. We must rise. We must fight. God bless the United States of America.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever's necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented. And the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefits of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
List out all who have foundations. Why is this relevant? How can donations be used personally? Analyze the filings. Who is charged with overseeing this? IRS? Corrupt? Politically motivated? The level of corruption in our country, and most others, is so severe, there is only one way. Arabella Advisors, for-profit, non-profit child organizations. All Due Respect, non-profit. Forsythia Foundation, non-profit. Hopewell Fund, non-profit. Mountain Philanthropies, for-profit. New Venture Fund, NVF, non-profit. 1630 Fund, 1630 Fund, non-profit. Windward Fund, non-profit. Some of Arabella Advisors, for-profit, non-profit clients: D.N. Batten Foundation, non-profit. Forsythia Foundation, non-profit. Hopewell Fund, non-profit. Impact Assets, Inc., non-profit. New Venture Fund, NVF, non-profit. North Fund, non-profit. 1630 Fund, 1630 Fund, non-profit. Windward Fund, non-profit. Hiding the money with fake groups? Arabella Advisors' fiscal sponsorship means sponsoring hundreds of fake groups via Arabella's 5 in-house nonprofits. These fake groups are little more than websites designed to look like standalone nonprofits. Since the Arabella Network's inception, it's sponsored at least 350-plus such groups. These fake groups rarely disclose their relationship to Arabella Advisors or any of its 4 in-house nonprofits. Nonetheless, many accept donations from the public, which go to Arabella's non-profits. This system also allows these groups to hide their funders, since it's virtually impossible to trace individual grants to Arabella's 4 non-profits to any particular fake group. Covert private funding of the 2020 election. We have covered the F foreign assets deployed in 2020. Now we will touch on the D domestic assets deployed. Did someone say money laundering? The Arabella-run New Venture Fund provided close to $25 million in funding to the Center for Technology and Civic Life (CTCL), a left-of-center nonprofit that passed roughly $350 million to thousands of elections offices in the form of COVID-19 relief funds ahead of the 2020 election, money which originated with Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. The new venture funds grant was CTCL's second largest donation in 2020. CTCL's private funding of election offices was widely criticized. In January 2022, the Wall Street Journal editorial board called for the practice to be banned by the states. Zuckerbucks shouldn't pay for elections because it fans mistrust to let private donors fund official voting duties. The Capital Research Center, which publishes Influence Watch, has noted in its analysis of CTCL spending that the group consistently gave bigger grants and more money per capita to counties that voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. In Georgia, for instance, CTCL grants averaged $1.41 per capita in counties won by President Donald Trump versus $5.33 in counties won by Biden. In essence, private financing of government election offices under the guise of COVID-19 relief skewed voter turnout in the 2020 election and may have tipped the presidential election to Joe Biden. The chief culprit was Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who poured $350 million into one nonprofit, the Center for Technology and Civic Life, CTCL. CTCL then distributed grants to hundreds of county and city elections officials in 47 states and the District of Columbia. Summer 2021, the flood of Zuckerberg bucks caught the attention of House Republicans, who sent CTCL a letter on June 21, 2021, demanding the group explain where its $350 million in COVID-19 relief funds went, since less than 1% of those funds were spent on personal protective equipment. They have also called on CTCL to publish its Form 990 for public review. As a result of the letter and public pressure, a dozen state legislatures have responded to these revelations with bills to protect free and fair elections by prohibiting or restricting private funding of government election offices. Not all the states banned the Zuckerberg bucks. Some only regulated or restricted private funding for elections offices. Believe it or not, we are winning. But we the people need to keep the pressure on by sharing this series to educate the masses on Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity. 12 states down, 38 to go. This has been the fourth of a multi-part series on Arabella Advisors. Stay tuned for part 5 of Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity.
The 1630 Fund, which is managed by Arabella Advisors, which is the largest Democrat dark money network in the country and considered public enemy number 1.
We work hard to bring you the best content possible. If it is a theory, we label it as such. If it is a fact, it's a fact whether we like it or not. If you see anything that looks incomplete or have found something new, please contact us by going to mg.show.link/contact. Let's dig in some more as we bring you the 5th installment of what we call Arabella Advisors, the third pillar of election integrity. Some big names have specifically called out the dark money network run by for-profit Arabella Advisors and their nonprofit funds, which in turn are funneled through over 350-plus pop-up foundations. Jeffrey Peterson and Shannon Townsend from the MG Show have been shining a light on Arabella Advisors since August of 2021. During the SCOTUS nomination committee hearing, Lindsey Graham exposed Arabella's dark money network.
What is it about your nomination that the most liberal people under the umbrella of Arabella threw in their money, their time, their support, and threatened Joe Biden if he picked Judge Childs? I want to know more about that.
Jim Jordan was on Fox News and was asked about the SCOTUS pick and drops in Arabella Advisors' bomb.
Arabella Advisory Group, this left-wing group, was the one behind pushing her. It's also interesting that group, their key lawyer who they pay all kinds of money to is Mark Elias, the same Mark Elias who was in the Durham filing, who was helping this whole process of framing President Trump. So I hope so. Yeah. So she's pretty radical.
General Flynn exposed Arabella Advisors at CCDF USA in Florida, said the enemy is Arabella Advisors, and then referred to the slide.
Most people have never heard of this. These are the 5 children of George Soros. Okay? That's who they are. That's who they represent.
Dinesh D'Souza was on the MG show, and Jeffrey Peterson asked Dinesh about the third pillar of election integrity, and Dinesh went on to explain that these NGOs and left-wing nonprofits served as vote stash houses and more.
The way you did it, just alone, just the ballot harvesting alone, the mules that you expose is enough to sway the election. Dinesh, is that true?
It is true, and you're also missing the other element, which is these left-wing NGOs and nonprofits, which serve as vote stash houses. That's where the mules get the ballots. The mules don't come up with their own ballots. They make a stop at one of these left-wing activist centers. They get the ballots, and then they go on their mailman-style routes from one drop box to another. 3 ballots over here, 5 ballots over there. I was talking to someone, just a day or so ago, and they're like, well, why don't they put all the ballots in one box? Well, that's because if you put 100 ballots in one place, it'll create a spike, which will be really obvious when they open the mailbox the next morning and fill out the custody documents. They'll see this unnatural spike of votes. So that's the reason that the votes are kind of spread around. It's to prevent people from raising concerns or eyebrows.
President Donald J. Trump at the Nebraska rally on May 1st, 2022, and said no private money pouring into local elections. This is a huge confirmation of the Foundation D code.
Between borders and elections, we're not going to have a country any longer. We're poisoning our country. And that means universal voter ID, citizenship confirmation, no more fake drop boxes, and no private money pouring into local elections.
In this series, we have only begun to list all who have foundations. These F, foreign, and D domestic billionaires use their foundations to change American election laws. Americans for Public Trust has filed a lawsuit demanding that the Federal Election Commission take action on their complaint against Swiss billionaire Hans-Jörg Weiss for funneling money into the liberal dark money network led by Eric Kessler's Arabella Advisors. The lawsuit alleges that Weiss used 2 nonprofit organizations, the Weiss Foundation and the Burger Action Fund, to contribute millions of dollars to the 1630 Fund and the New Venture Fund, 2 so-called dark money groups that fund liberal causes through operations like the Hub Project and Demand Justice. This statement of facts in the Americans for Public Trust's complaint to the Federal Election Committee more than implies that Hans-Jörg Weiss is not a citizen of the United States of America. In essence, foreign assets deployed and ultimately change our election laws. Hans-Jörg Weiss is a Swiss billionaire who donates to a variety of causes and organizations through an established foundation, the Weiss Foundation, a 501c3 organization, and the Burger Action Fund, a 501c4 organization, which shares facilities and staff with the Weiss Foundation. At the center of the effort is an opaquely named Democratic organization, the Hub Project, which is on track to spend nearly $30 million since 2017, pressuring members of Congress in their districts. The great bulk of its funding has come from so-called dark money funds from donors who are not legally required to reveal their names. The Hub Project is not a standalone entity, but a registered trademark of the New Venture Fund, a 501c3 organization. Since 2007, the Weiss Foundation has given approximately $556.5 million to New Venture Fund. The 1630 Fund is a 501c4 organization, and both are part of the Arabella Advisors managed nonprofits. Additionally, Mr. Gurney confirmed that the Hub Project controls the money flowing from the 1630 Fund into the state-level groups, but the larger nonprofit does not have to disclose its funding sources. The Burger Action Fund gave over $135 million to the 1630 Fund between 2016 and 2020. The 1630 Fund is considered to be among the leading dark money spenders on the left, including a vast array of organizations engaged in electoral advocacy as their primary purpose. Contributions from the 1630 Fund were used to fund political activities of the state affiliates under the Hub Project. In the FEC complaint, it has been alleged that Hans-Jörg Weiss's Hub Project is a registered trademark of the New Venture Fund. This now ties foreign dark money to Arabella Advisors. Foreign nationals are prohibited from making contributions or expenditures directly or indirectly. Commissioner Weintraub made it abundantly clear in her draft interpretive rule that indeed, the Commission has recognized the broad scope of the Foreign National Contribution Prohibition and found that even where the value of a good or service may be nominal or difficult to ascertain, such contributions are nevertheless banned. It is known in both the Republican and Democrat Party that foreign nationals are prohibited from making contributions or expenditures directly or indirectly, and the complaint clearly points this out. Further, foreign nationals are prohibited from providing any substantial assistance in making any expenditure or independent expenditure or participating in any decision-making regarding election-related activities. However, Mr. Weiss and his foundations created a sophisticated political operation to advance progressive policy initiatives, and the Democrats who support them in setting up the Hub Project as a conduit to influence the 2018 congressional races. The elaborate structure of Mr. Weiss's contributions demonstrates a scheme to conceal the true source of these funds and then evade the prohibitions on foreign nationals. In addition, as a foreign national, Mr. Weiss is strictly prohibited from making direct contributions to political committees. Yet from 1990 to 2003, Mr. Weiss made direct contributions to federal candidates totaling nearly $70,000. It appears that Mr. Weiss doesn't seem to be stopping his sizable contributions to the KG funds led by Arabella Advisors. However, the most glaring crack in the armor of this elaborate scheme to utilize a foreign national's funds to indirectly make contributions and expenditures is the admission by Hub Project Executive Director Arkady Gurney that the Hub Project controls a super PAC of its own, Change Now, to run advertisements against Republicans. Here is how Mr. Weiss tried to hide his influence and affiliation to his foreign dark money network. Federal law is clear that contributions made in the name of another are strictly prohibited. The Hub Project has served as a vehicle for the political spending of Mr. Weiss. This is demonstrated by the fact that Mr. Weiss has not publicly disclosed his role in founding the Hub Project. Neither his influence nor his financial support can be found anywhere on the group's website. Rather, information regarding his involvement with the Hub Project was the result of interviews with 5 people with knowledge of the Hub Project, an internal memo from another liberal group that was obtained by the New York Times. Mr. Weiss did not establish the Hub Project through one of his 2 foundations. Rather, he structured the project to be overseen by another entity, the New Venture Fund, which received $56.5 million from the Weiss Foundation, with additional funds of $135 million made available through the Burger Action Fund to the 1630 Fund. This financial arrangement enabled Mr. Weiss to avoid any connection with the sizable election activities carried out by the Hub Project and Change Now. Merely because the scheme developed by Mr. Weiss has made his contributions difficult to ascertain does not mean that they should be free from being treated as though they were made directly. We now know that Hans-Jörg Weiss is the mastermind behind this foreign dark money Goliath. Let's tie it all together and gain some insight. Dozens of public and private foundations are donating to the for-profit Arabella Advisors main funds. The 501c3 and 501c4 serve as tax shelters to help conceal elite and foreign donors and their dark money. 2 of the funds, New Venture and 1630, use one of their 350-plus pop-up organizations disguised as grassroots organizations, hidden in plain sight. These pop-ups can be stood up at the speed it takes to publish a website. They tend to be run as short-term, high-intensity media campaigns targeting the news cycle. As soon as a pop-up loses its usefulness, it is put back on the shelf. This circular economy of sorts is used to finance, influence, lobby, and control our elections. There are laws that prohibit a foreign national from donating in U.S. elections. Yet here the green card billionaire is influencing our elections. It's not just Hans-Jörg Weiss. Arabella Advisors are evasive too. What is that old saying? If you have nothing to hide, then you have no reason to worry. Americans for Public Trust APT watchdog group made an in-person request for nonprofit tax documents Arabella Advisors is legally required to provide. Arabella Advisors staffers who were present at one of their Washington, D.C. offices refused to provide the watchdog group with copies of the Form 990s and called security to remove the APT representative from the building within 5 minutes of the watchdog group representative's arrival. Just a few weeks prior, Arabella Advisors' CEO stated they were compliant with all laws. The law required them to hand over these dark money tax returns, and they failed to comply. One might conclude Arabella Advisors are delaying the release of documents that could show how hundreds of millions of dollars were spent to influence public policy and U.S. elections. As we reported on May 14, 2021, a watchdog group filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, FEC, seeking an immediate investigation and enforcement action against Hans-Jörg Weiss Foundation, New Venture Fund, including its trademark Hub Project, 1630 Fund, and Burger Action Fund, formerly Weiss Action Fund, for violations of the Federal Election Campaign Act, FECA. As a political committee, the Hub Project would be subject to reporting requirements under FECA. The Hub Project is a beneficiary of over $190 million from its financial backer, Mr. Hans-Jörg Weiss, who contributed through the Weiss Foundation and the Burger Action Fund to Arabella Advisors' network of nonprofits. Despite these significant, sizable contributions, the complaint alleges the Hub Project has failed to properly file the source of the contributions. Therefore, the Commission should find a reason to believe that Mr. Hans-Jörg Weiss, the Weiss Foundation, the Burger Action Fund, New Venture Fund, 1630 Fund, and the Hub Project have violated fundamental compliance and transparency rules with prohibited contributions by a foreign national. We are still waiting on an action report for the complaint in question. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are only just scratching the surface. We need everyone's help. We, the people, are the majority. When are we going to have that light bulb moment? We must speak out and be heard to get the foreign assets deployed in our elections removed. The foreign dark money plagues our elections. When are we going to take back our country from a system run by a small group of foreign and domestic billionaires who want us to remain in this suspended, elite dark fantasy? The choice is yours to make. Will you stand idly by and watch our republic run into the ground? Or will you take a stand and declare your rightful role as an American? Know this, we are with you. We the people are with you. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth. Together, we've delved into the shadows where dark money lurks, threatening the very foundation of our republic. But our mission doesn't end here. As stewards of our republic, it's up to each and every one of us to shine a light on the forces that seek to manipulate and undermine it. We urge you to join in our efforts to uncover more information, to stand up against the influence of dark money in our elections, and to spread awareness far and wide. Your voice matters. Your actions matter. Together, we can reclaim the integrity of our electoral process and ensure that the will of the people prevails. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your commitment to saving America. Let's keep the heartbeat of our constitutional republic strong. Join us in this vital mission.